Hey, everybody listening to this.
Hi.
There we go. I got it. All right, we're gonna try it again. And since we know we can't edit audio, we're just gonna leave this in. So,
Back in the saddle.
hey, everybody!
Yay!
I am Loren O'Brien, and this is Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
I like that
Thank
energy.
you. This is the podcast where we write stories about history and stuff
That's
sober,
my baby daddy.
and we
The suits
deliver
behind
them
the glass like that one a
in
lot.
slightly inebriated stages. And as you can hear, there is just a
I'm sober
bunch
as
of
it
excitement
goes.
tonight. I would like to thank me for being here.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome,
you.
me. And then I'd also like to thank Mr. Sean Hill,
Oh yeah.
who's here with us, putting us up, being the quiet professional producer in the background.
I don't put you up, I try and put you down.
Oh, you really?
Yeah.
Everybody does. It seems like a common theme in my life.
Huh?
911's a joke in my town.
Yeah.
Glad
so-
I'm not mixing with the other crowd.
Yeah, so thank you. And then as you've heard the voice of already, I'm sure, Mr. Joe Dacey is also here.
Ow, ow.
Yeah, our resident storyteller.
Oh, good
Yeah,
to be
how,
here.
How you feeling? You guys you staying cool? Actually, Mr. Sam,
I like podcasts.
are you staying cool? Cooler than being cool?
I'm as cool as the kid that came to school just for lunch.
His shirt
Hell yeah,
says
dude.
stud on it.
It really does.
It really
you
does.
listeners at home don't know, but Sam's shirt says stud. It's
Yes, I'm wearing apparel
Pretty
by
cool.
the company Stud, which
Bull-
is made by our
Bull
buddy
Stud.
Bull
That's-
Stud, which is made by our buddy Marcus Quintana,
plug.
Yep.
who's
Plug.
great. He's from Texas.
Yeah.
Check out his merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so it's very Texas themed.
Sounds like a CIA
You know,
shrill.
there's the bull. It says Stud. You know, it's very Texas.
So if you're listening,
So
Marcus,
I'm rocking
you
his
owe
shit,
me.
boy.
And
you owe
you
me
owe
$20.
me. yeah, $20 for the advertisement. So what do you
You
guys
have to use
know?
that friend
each of
debt
us.
collector shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna hit him with that friend debt collector. So what
Venmo.
do you guys know about Mary Jones, otherwise known as Mother Jones?
I think she was a mom.
60s thing.
No, yeah, it's 1860s.
I was going to say it was an old black lady that played guitar that was really badass, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong now.
Did she live in Jonestown?
She did not.
Okay.
In fact,
Then I know nothing
Jonestown
about
she
was
this.
didn't
older.
really live anywhere for a very long time.
Huh.
It's a
Jim
pretty
Jones
interesting
did
story.
have his mom at the compound.
Yeah, like
but she
literally
died,
most
way
of
before
history
all
she
that
didn't
happened.
live, and then she was born.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So,
Ooh.
we're just gonna kind of jump into this. Mary G. Harris Jones, 4 names, but she gets the last name.
That's a
little later.
capital G.
Yeah.
3 names, you're a serial killer. 4, you're a historian revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, before she got married, she was Mary Harris, and then Mary Harris Jones after her marriage. We're gonna get into it. But she has been a lot of things in her life. She's been a seamstress, a teacher, a mother, wife, a widow, a political activist, an agitator for workers, unions, and and she
agitator.
She
I like
eventually
that.
became the world's most dangerous woman in America. Yeah,
Badass.
yeah.
I think I'm
I
gonna put
like
that on
this
my
broad.
next application. I'm gonna be like previous job agitator for.
Yeah.
I was once.
So she
The
survived.
place I got fired
Inciting a
from.
riot.
I was
Yeah,
an
uh,
agitator at Dunkin' Donuts.
She survived the potato famine, and she became one of the leading people in organizing the industrial workers of the world in the United States. Which is kind of funny that they were called that, even though anyway. Mother Jones, as she later became known by, was a constant thorn in the side of the established order. From the coal mine workers at Blair Mountain to leading a children's march, Mother Jones wanted to raise some hell.
A children's march?
We're gonna get into it a little
Okay,
bit later.
all right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have questions about that.
She was a real saint. She force marched children all the way to the White House
And-
and started shooting them in the back of the head till she got her way.
Before we continue,
She's a bad
I just
bitch.
want you guys to remember.
That's not true.
No, that's not true at all. But before you guys remember, or before we continue, before you guys remember, I do want you guys to remember that this woman, throughout this whole story, is barely 5 feet tall. She is tiny, just the smallest woman ever. Anyway, her career as a political agitator and workers' rights advocate didn't start for quite a few years after her life did. She was born in the, quote, city of Cork, Ireland in 1830.
Cork. I love
yeah,
Cork.
Cork, Ireland.
They have
Um,
their accents.
God.
It sounds like you're singing. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and she wrote that in her autobiography, but we're going to kind of get into it because the exact date of her birth isn't known, and most historians note her birth as being between like 1830 and 1844, so it's like there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Honestly, like a 14-year discrepancy, so...
Well, she was 29 for a while, I bet.
She was 14 for a while.
And it's like the 1800, like the early
it's
part
the
of the
1800s,
1800s. You could lose track of what day of the week it was back then. Like, no problem.
Hey, you mean they didn't have calendars and read English?
So regardless of how old she actually was, her family had grown up very poor. So we're starting here with the very beginning of her life. And their family were tenant farmers in Ireland. So for those who may have missed out on our episode about the Irish famine, the Trail of Tears, and the solidarity between the two peoples, a tenant farmer is somebody who farms the land that they rent, and they...
Fancy
in the case
word for slave.
Yeah, in the case of many Irish people at the time, the land that they farmed was paid for with the crop that they harvested. Especially in the case of Irish people of the time, they'd farm the land for their landlord, and then they'd supply them with their rent, which was just all the food that they had. So they would have to grow a second, smaller garden or crop just to like provide food enough for themselves. So life was extremely hard. It was cold, it was damp, and for the Irish at the time, it was just super difficult. So,
But they
again,
were getting a lot from the people up top.
That's
they were
true.
really helping them out.
that's actually the
financially and
through line that you're going to see in this story is that Mary,
Joe?
being a political agitator,
What?
she was just being mean to these really, really generous rich people. So
I'm
we're
really
going to get into
trying
that
to get
in a
in the
little bit.
Build-A-Bear group, but like that's a whole
Build-A-Bear?
nother. Yeah, like
The Build-A-Bird?
no,
The Build-A-Bear group.
the group that makes those teddy bears for kids. Like I
It's a bunch
heard
of,
that
it's
they're
just a
like
bunch
one
of
of
like
the most
35-year-old
famous.
moms that go to Build-A-Bear together. Joe's
do
really,
yoga there?
really sweaty for it. He's actually pouring sweat right now just talking about it.
Anyway, so Mary, she grew up during the potato famine era, and when she was 5 years old, her father emigrated to the United States and became an American citizen. It's a railway worker. His work took him about the northern Midwest states like Wisconsin, North Dakota, just kind of even into like Canada. And he basically was building and maintaining the fledgling infrastructure that would one day turn into the modern industrial railways we know of today. So, as Richard Harris, Mary's father, landed in Toronto, Canada, he immediately sent for his family. After a short while, Mary and her mother made their way over and eventually settled in America. Mary Jones was sent to school like all the other students and passed all of her common school classes. After her common classes, what we would see it as like kindergarten through high school, she went through what was referred to at the time as normal schools. Do you guys just want to guess at what that is real quick?
Normal?
Yeah, normal school.
Well,
What do you
I
learn?
would guess in that
It's-
time they had normal schools and they had retarded schools. Is that right?
No.
Oh,
All right,
they
Sam,
had
is it-
retarded schools, but
Normal school is where they teach you to be a good lady.
Close, actually. You want to guess?
It has to do with the weed thing. Normal.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Normal was started around this time, so
So that's why I'm
the
like, it's
cannabis
yeah.
advocates might be no. So a normal school was a type of school whose graduates would later go on to teach students. It was a school for teachers. They learned pedagogy and curriculum, which I'm sure are way
What?
pedagogy.
Oh, that's something else.
It's just to talk. It's just talking. How you
Okay.
talk to people. And interesting.
It's like if you just talk like this.
I will fucking murder you.
Oh, I'm sure, but it's okay. You could have those emotions.
Gentlemen, no need for murder and patronizing.
Fuck.
But the cool thing about this is that these schools are still around today. They just go by the title teachers training colleges, or more simply, just sometimes teachers colleges.
So general education.
Kind of,
it's
yeah.
a gen ed degree.
Yeah.
you should be a
Um,
teacher because you failed out of everything else.
Yeah, and it was
That's a PE teacher.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what I mean.
Jesus Christ. So
Coach
she
asshole.
she kind of went through normal school for a little bit and graduate. I don't think she actually graduated, but some accounts say that she did. And according to some sources, she was also struck immediately after graduation with wanderlust. So, Mother Jones began teaching a job in Monroe, Michigan. However, after a short while, she left back to Chicago to start a dressmaking business, which, according to her, went rather well.
When you say struck with wanderlust, like she just wanted to go, or
Wanderlust, yeah. She wanted to kind of
Okay,
travel
alright.
around a little bit.
You want to make sure
was
it wasn't like
lustful for
diagnosed,
wandering.
like something
Exactly.
diagnosed back then.
Yeah.
Getting real horned up for wandering around.
A
The
li-
girl who can't stay in her hometown, she
A-
must have been diagnosed with wanderlust.
A lightning bolt came down, hit her right in the head with some wander. Now she can't think all right. No,
Lustful for it.
no, yeah, she her dressmaking business, according to her, went rather well, and she honestly preferred it to teaching.
According to her.
Well, yeah, she had a
Do
part.
you have receipts?
No, I don't have.
Do you
Tax
have the,
information?
I
the
don't-
guy that was in charge of her during the time?
According to her autobiography, she states, "quote I preferred sewing to bossing around little children."
Yeah, it
End
went
quote.
better for her.
Yeah.
Right.
She, however, went back to teaching after a little while and finding herself a home in Memphis. It was in Memphis, Mary, having been satiated with wandering the Midwest, found herself a nice little life to settle into, at least for a short while.
She got all calf-legged from wanderlust. Decided to settle down.
No, she's...
Half leg.
I know the family was Catholic.
Calf leg.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I heard something
Calf
completely
leg.
different.
It's like calling someone bovine.
You guys ever go down a mental tangent, but it turns out that that tangent was for absolutely no reason because you heard something incorrectly? Happens to me all the time.
Yeah,
Jesus.
nice to meet
And
you
it
too.
would have been
Yeah,
a
nice to meet you,
Good,
Sean.
you?
and like a question that would better fit the story too. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, what kind of religion was she? You know?
Yeah, exactly. So Memphis is where she found herself face to face with the righteous indignation of the working class. In 1861, Mary found herself a
Being
man.
poor fucking like subsistence farmer wasn't enough.
Well, we're going to get into it a little bit because she found herself a man. And his name
Yeah.
was George E. Jones.
And
With-
this
and
is
with-
the end of the story because everything worked out after this
Exactly.
point.
Happily
Goodbye.
ever
Have a
after.
great night,
All right.
everybody. I'll
Lots
see you
of
all
All
casserole.
later.
right, it's been a fun episode, guys. We'll
Yep. I'm going swimming.
no, and with her husband,
Joe, put your pants back on.
with her husband
No.
making enough wages for the family, very much like today, Mary was able to switch her focus from labor to housekeeping. George E. Jones had been a member of the Iron Molders Union. This was possibly her first taste of the fight for a better life, the fight that would go on to be a reoccurring theme in her life. Yeah. Diseases, epidemics, and pandemics have punctuated human history constantly, and a bout of yellow fever swept through Texas and Louisiana, eventually moving to places like Kentucky and Tennessee in 1867. So this is about 6 years after she does her thing. And Mother Jones watched the frantic spread of yellow fever as it entered into the public light, eventually making its way and sweeping through Memphis. I found in my research, this is just a side note that I thought was super interesting because I had no idea about yellow fever. But yeah, I found in my research that yellow fever had first been discovered in 1492 and had continuously been coming in waves since then. So it would just like commonly just pop up somewhere randomly, just unannounced, before like just sweeping through and causing fucking hayok and just disappearing as quickly as it had
A
come.
lot like dance fever.
Just like that's what diseases do.
No. It's completely unlike anything that has ever happened anywhere ever, and also unlike anything that could be happening right now.
What about disco fever?
Oh shit, you're right,
Yeah.
dude. Damn. So Mother Jones said this about the outbreak in her autobiography. Quote, in 1867, a fever epidemic swept Memphis. Its victims were mainly among the poor and the workers. The rich and the well-to-do fled the city. Schools and churches were closed. People were not permitted to enter the house of a yellow fever victim without permits. The poor could not afford nurses. Across the street from me, 10 persons lay dead from the plague. The dead surrounded us. They were buried at night quickly and without ceremony. All about my house I could hear the weeping and cries of delirium. One by one my 4 little children sickened and died. I washed their little bodies and got them ready for burial. My husband caught the fever and died. I sat alone through nights of grief. No one came to me. No one could. Other homes were as stricken as mine. All day long, all night long, I heard the grating of the wheels of the death cart. After the union had buried my husband, excuse me, I got a permit to nurse the sufferers. I did this until the plague was stamped out. So
I don't got any jokes
So
for
anybody who thinks that they're having a fucking hard time right now,
Yeah.
that.
so
Wear
the
your
next
fucking
time
mask.
that somebody you're like having to deal with somebody who's got a fucking problem wearing a mask, or is like really bent out of shape about whatever, and this Corona shit going on, remind them of Mother Jones.
Yeah. Because Mother
who
Jones
buried all 4 of her children and her husband, and that just because of a fever.
Yeah. And still became the most dangerous woman in America.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to that point yet.
Well,
Yeah, like-
obviously, this is her this is like the story part of the story arc where she becomes a badass. Like,
Yeah, well,
Oh yeah, it's Joker falling. No, it's Batman finding out he's Batman. It's like the origin story.
yeah, and it is kind of her
Captain
origin
Marvel
story.
getting like caught in the explosion.
Ooh, that's a little better.
right.
I only know a couple of them, and they're the only ones that pop up.
Captain
Yeah.
Marvel's the coolest.
And
Joker in the Vat is the only one that all.
what I want to note too
DC's garbage.
is that like
You're
after
garbage.
after the Union had buried her husband, she had gone out and gotten permission to nurse the other people dying of this fucking plague.
She bought
And
a
she did that
permit.
until it was gone.
That was her like kind of thinking it was a death sentence. It
Yeah.
seems like.
Yeah, it was definitely her kind of going into that rampage at the end of the movie where the guy's like, I could possibly die, but if I hit the button, the bomb won't go off and I'll save America. You know what I mean?
But it's permittable.
Yeah. She's got a permit to do it now.
Yeah.
License to kill, license to not kill,
Not kill.
license to live.
License to podcast. So after helping the sick in Memphis, Mother Jones decided to move back to Chicago to restart her dressmaking business.
Old Chi-Town.
Where business was good. Again, this is,
Again.
yeah. She made some
Baby's dying.
high-end clothing for the, quote, aristocrats of Chicago. That quote comes from her autobiography. This is where she saw firsthand how the upper class feasted and dined, warm and comfortable and oblivious to the world of the struggles around them. While working for these people, she experienced something that she felt strange about, and she experienced this nearly every day of winter. This experience came from working at her desk, which overlooked a street called Lake Shore Drive. Oops, I went too far down.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
Chi-Town,
From the warmth of
Windy City.
From the warmth of the luxurious building, she would look down through the plate glass window, quote, to see the poor, shivering wretches, jobless and hungry, walking along the frozen lakefront. The contrast of their condition with that of the tropical comfort of the people for whom I sewed was painful to me. My employers seemed neither to notice nor care. Summers, too, from the windows of the rich. I used to watch the mothers come to the west side slums, lugging babies and little children, hoping for a breath of cool, fresh air from the lake. And at night, when the tenements were stifling hot, men, women, and little children slept in the parks. But the rich, having donated to the ice fund, had, by the time it was hot in the city, gone to seaside and the mountains, end quote. So she's like, kind of shitting on the upper crust. I mean,
Yeah.
she wrote this when she was already pretty old, and so like she's very much shitting on the upper crust. But this is like her early parts of being like, wait, what the fuck? What the fuck is that, dude?
It's like a fork in the road where she could have been like, all right, actually, I could prepare like the rich and get up there with all of them, or go the other way.
Yeah, and with her parents having been poor and like kind of digging themselves out of their own like slums with like the American dream, so to speak. I think she kind of felt like. I think she kind of felt like how our older the boomers, feel about the couple generations before them, where it was like life was so good back then. Like all you had to do is do this, and now we've got to do things a new way. But if I work really hard and dedicate myself to it, I'll make things different. And not for nothing, fucking Mr. Harris got shit done and you know made life a little different. So, Mr. Harris, yeah, the Mother Jones's dad, yeah, Mary Harris.
I'll be honest, I haven't heard a lot. Like, I feel like that the golden age is like the greatest generation is the boomers, like the guys
That's
who
what they
won
call
World War
themselves.
II.
Yeah, and
like,
their descendants.
And the post-war time economic boom that occurred after that, where all these GIs had money. There was all this industry now, like the money's like reinvigorated your automobile industry.
Yeah.
That's where the
Well, and funnily enough,
this is where
we
the
talked about
concept of the American road trip comes from.
Well, and we talked about the in our union workers podcast. We talked about how, like, due to the fact that some of these union protesters were protesting, some of the people who were building the cars were now able to buy them, which led to, like, the later part of the 40s and early part of the 50s and just the whole 50s just booming with, like, the white picket fence imagery, you know, where everything's great, dad earns enough money. It was these protests that Jones and just a shitload of other people fucking worked in that actually brought us that generation. And so when people were like, protesting wimps and stuff like that, it's like, no, that's literally our heritage. Like, we talk about this certain flag that's our heritage. This is our fucking heritage.
It would be like someone be like, hey, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the middle class, and we're not going to have the middle class anymore. And then all the people is either going to be working hard or like having
lounging
fun
back,
with it.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mary Jones had experienced she'd experienced this quite often during the 4 years that she worked for the well-to-do in Chicago. When the Chicago fire of 1871 had started. The fire, which I found very funny, was rumored to be caused by Mrs. O'Leary's cow.
Yeah.
And it raged
Kicked
for,
over a lantern.
Yeah, it raged for 2 whole days, killing 300 people and left more than 100,000 residents homeless, and had taken Mother Jones's dressmaking business from her, as well as had left 3 square fucking miles of town destroyed.
But it turned Chicago into one of the best cities around because everything was built with wood back then, and now they were able to have this already set city and then build it the way that they wanted to build it in the first place.
Yeah.
But it had so much in the way in the first place.
Yeah, and it's the industrial age, so like you're getting better materials,
Right.
steel's
Yeah.
becoming a thing.
Let's not to be a conspiracy theorist or anything,
Oh,
but
no.
I don't believe for a fucking second that fire was caused by a cow kicking.
Actually,
away.
I
It was
looked
like
into it.
somebody like burned that shit down because it made it easier to acquire that land and build a bunch of stone buildings where there had been
Ooh.
poor wood ones.
That is a really good one and very likely.
Nero fiddled while Rome burned. You know why Rome burned? Because he needed a bigger palace.
Yeah.
So
It blows my
powerful
mind
people are
that
more than capable of
Detroit's
doing
not
it.
on fire right now. That we're just
So-
letting Detroit stand there because it would be the next step is to burn it down and build a city there. And
Yeah, maybe not though. But the interesting thing about the cow, like I was looking into it, and Mrs. O'Leary's cow is probably not the reason for it. There's a couple of different reasons, like somebody knocked over a lantern or somebody fell. I think Mrs. O'Leary had kids that might have been out there smoking in the hay and like dumped their pipe out, and so there's a couple of different reasons, and like the Mrs. O'Leary's cow thing is just something hilarious that I found about this
It was
story.
just like blame the cow because otherwise it was Timmy.
Yeah, or something to that effect, because there's a couple
yeah,
of
but then
different
Timmy
theories,
went out and
but-
killed like 7 women, and
Yes,
if they brought it
so-
up right off the bat, they would all be fine.
Yeah, and we could probably go ahead and blame Timmy for it, but I just don't want to jump to any conclusions.
That's
what
right. Timmy
150
H.
years later?
Holmes, that was his name.
Just don't want to do
Well,
it.
I mean, there's nobody alive to prove us wrong.
Yeah, and so when the
yeah, we're not
Chicago
gonna get sued for slander.
so when the Chicago fire of 1870 had burned,
O'Leary did it.
this is about when Mary G. Harris Jones began her transformation
For gangster.
in the persona who would later be known and remembered as Mother Jones. Jones started working with a Knights of Labor organization shortly after the fire. Her job was to like organize strikes with workers and to use her fiery orator skills to get them all riled up. Mother Jones wanted people indignant with the conditions and pay that they were receiving. The Knights of Labor were an organization that existed in both the U.S. and Canada at the time. And in its description, it was described as like a, quote, labor federation, whatever the fuck that means.
That's a union.
Yeah, well, that's what, we'll get into it. Because it wasn't a union.
No, but it's...
Yeah, and the Knights of Labor worked mostly in the latter part of like the 1800s, where they organized similarly to a labor union. Like they promoted uplifting their fellow man and women into earning a wage that was enough to live on. The Knights of Labor also made sure that the workers were not taken advantage of by the people who didn't hold the shovels, wrenches, or sewing needles. The K of L was for helping the working class overall. I really like that. That's what they call it. K of L, dude. The K of L were surprisingly woke for their time, too, as I mentioned. The Knights of Labor worked to organize and negotiate deals for all people, regardless of race or gender. By focusing on the cultural and social aspects of labor, the K of L eventually got strong and began demanding 8-hour days. It would also sometimes go in to negotiate with employers, but it wasn't a union because it wasn't funded by its members. And that's like, that was one thing that I was reading in like all the history about the Knights of Labor is that they really, really wanted you to know they weren't a union because they weren't getting paid. So like, I don't know why it was so important to them. Maybe it's
the precursor to,
yeah,
and maybe they found out that it's so much work that you should be paid for it.
Yeah, and maybe that's where Federation comes in, but Federations kick a little money upwards, up the chain. I don't know. Anyway, so the demonstrations, strikes, and protests that the Knights of Labor and Mother Jones put on failed more often than not, with some events ending in violence. In contrast to today, the police sometimes would shoot and kill protesters, which again is very unlike today. 140 years later, the police and how we air our grievances are very different. And it's very cool that 150 years later, 140 years later, that things are so much like, I know that we all feel protected by police.
Yeah, cops.
So it's pretty cool.
They're like,
nothing makes me feel safer than a police officer.
So we're going to talk a
who's
little
angry and has a gun and upset and thinks that I'm somebody else.
Yeah. There's some pretty...
That's my fave.
Yeah, and like the stories aren't just like months, years old. Like even today I read a fucking horror story about a cop and it's fucking gnarly, dude.
We're kind of in the prime time for why that's especially scary.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to talk about cops here in a little bit. I think...
Ooh.
I think...
I don't like them. I'm not going to have good opinions on them.
Yeah. So, in another one of our episodes, we talked about labor unions, and we discussed the event called the Haymarket Affair. And we're going to kind of touch a little bit on it here tonight, but you can listen to that one for more details. The Haymarket Affair was a labor demonstration in Chicago in 1886. May 1st was supposed to be when the protests had been planned, and they were very much intentionally planning for peaceful protests. But it was met with police. And so we're going to let Mother Jones take the lead here from her autobiography. Quote, the 1st of May, which was to usher in the 8-hour day uprising, came. The newspapers had done everything to alarm the people. All over the city there were strikes and walkouts. Employers quaked in their boots. They saw revolution. The workers in the McCormick Harvester Works gathered outside the factory. Those inside who did not join the strikers were called scabs. Bricks were thrown, windows were broken, the scabs were threatened. Someone turned in a riot call. The police, without warning, charged down upon the workers, shooting into their midst, clubbing right and left. Many were trampled under horses' feet. Numbers were shot dead, skulls were broken, young men and young girls were clubbed to death. The Pinkerton Agency, which is kind of like just a
private police force.
They became... It's like Blackwater.
They literally became the
PIs.
Securitas.
Yeah.
Isn't that where like PI came from?
Yeah, it was like they were like the
investigators.
original
Anyway,
investigators.
Yeah, continuing with Miss Jones or Mother Jones's quote. The Pinkerton Agency formed armed bands of ex-convicts and hoodlums and hired them to capitalists at $8 a day to picket the factories and incite trouble, end quote. So, yeah, May 1st was supposed to be a peaceful event in which the workers would strike for an 8-hour workday, but instead the police are called for a riot, and a riot starts, a bunch of people are hurt, and so the striking workers decide to get together 3 days later in a dingy little area called Haymarket Square. May 4th comes along and the protesters go to Haymarket Square to air their grievances and protest brutal police tactics used to quell what was surely seen as an industrial insurrection. As the events went on, the police tried to disperse the crowd yet again. Using force, they tried to push the picketers out of the square. This was when a bomb was dropped out of a hotel window at the police's feet. And it was damn near at their feet. After its detonation, yet another riot occurred, which that's bad rioting because I think we can just say that that's the same riot. The same riot's still happening. Just now there's a bomb.
Yeah.
But people were
Probably
firing.
amped it up a little bit.
Yeah, people were firing just fucking wildly into the area in an attempt to either defend themselves or disperse the crowd. It's kind of hard to tell who had guns and who didn't. Regardless of who was shooting, the end result was a failed peaceful protest.
Well,
a riot,
I could tell
more
you
police
that
violence against striking workers. Over 100 people were injured during what was later called the Haymarket Affair, either by gunfire or bomb, and another 11 had died.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like one thing, like you could say, I don't know who had weapons or who had like guns.
We know the police had guns.
Yeah, the police
We know-
definitely had guns.
Yeah, and so, well,
that's
being-
always the scary thing about it.
Yeah, and so being unbiased, it's like I can't say that only the police were shooting. Like that's
yeah.
just responsible writing. I can't say that the police were they definitely had guns. So I don't know who else had guns. So we're gonna take a short little break for some sweet little commercials. And when we get back, we're going to talk about how the K of L kind of changed after the Haymarket Affair and how that kind of changed the direction for Mother Jones and where she was going to go. So I hope all of you guys listening enjoy these tasty-ass commercials and buy some products.
Support our funding as a podcast by listening to these next few commercials.
That's how we get funding.
Brought
So-
to you by viewers like you.
We'll break.
Thank you for listening to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. And now a word from our sponsors.
They're fake sponsors.
No, but
What?
they're our sponsors.
Yeah, but I feel like we really need to just like emphasize that they're fake
But
sponsors.
isn't this how we get sponsors?
It is how we get sponsors, but it's only because we're sponsoring ourselves.
But
and how good that we can be sponsored.
Wait,
We're making commercials
So,
to show people how good
what
we
are we
are.
sponsoring?
Right now we're sponsoring the show and the commercials, which we need to get back to,
Okay.
if you don't mind. So,
Sponsor break.
this has been Black Sheep and Bad Apples. Break. The makers of the Lasso Hammer are happy to introduce you to our new product, the Rugged Lasso Hammer.
With a steel reinforced rope and a stainless steel lead infused hammerhead.
Any man who knows his way around a construction site is going to use one of these.
With high tensile strength and an aerodynamic design.
It's fun for the whole family, even the kids. And you bring it to a construction site, you're going to really nail it.
The Rugged Lasso Hammer.
Swing it,
Nail it.
rugged
Lasso
lasso
hammer.
hammer. Discreet Cleaners is your choice for confidential cleaning.
We'll clean your
Carpet,
room
backseat,
or trunk,
house,
condo,
apartment,
boat, limo,
or bathtub.
with stains including
Blood,
brains,
guts,
bones,
piss,
shit,
vomit,
cum,
chocolate, and other stains including
dirt and mud,
wax candles,
rose petals,
broken glass, and Dear John letters.
discreet cleaners. We're here for you. Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth.
Where we teach your kids to swim through the flood and outrun the plague. We walk on water with our new core program.
We'll teach them to shoot, garden, hunt, skin, gut, and can all their own food.
T-shirts are available at sfsbfscfy.gov.
You can order the Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth manual at sfsbfscfy.gov.
Log on to the Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth to get 15% off on all tickets to all 3 days of the Christian Fests He Is Written tour.
Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth.
Ready for revelations?
Now you will be.
Hatefields is also clean. From farmyards to outhouses, barnyards to bedpans.
Our highly skilled team of shit technicians are specially trained to handle all your fecal phenomena.
We'll be there to wipe your property clean.
Hatefields is also clean. We literally take your shit.
And now, back to the Black Sheep and Bad Apples podcast. Hello, listeners. We are back.
We're back.
All 4 of us. Well, there's technically 5 of us, because
But the dog
Joe's
don't
dog
talk.
Fresh is here, and it is her birthday.
It
is her
is.
birthday
Happy
today.
birthday,
Fresh.
Fresh.
Happy birthday,
Fresh
Fresh.
is the best.
You cute little pibble,
Oh, she's the tiniest little
cutie
bean.
pie. So we're gonna get back and do it with this. After the bombing is when the decline of the Knights of Labor began. It was a slow decline, but a decline nonetheless. With the rise of the American Federation of Labor and a public disdain for the secretive ways in which the K&L operated, they slowly lost members until they just kind of gradually faded into history. However, Mother Jones became more invested in the idea of equality. One can imagine the frustration felt by the Unionists, protesters, and workers during each and every setback. Every demonstration that descended into violence was another opportunity lost for a better life as a whole. Every worker who went on to get injured, maimed, or killed in those factories did so to make a company profits that the profit makers weren't sharing. This meant that Mother Jones's work was not done, no matter how bleak the situation may have looked.
Still ain't.
Yep, still ain't. So Jones continued with her work, and even got together with the United Mine Workers. As mentioned earlier, she was a very great orator, and she could get a crowd fired up into a frenzy. As such, she helped lead strikes and picket lines. Even when management brought in strike breakers and militias, she would encourage her men, who she referred to affectionately as "my boys," to hold the lines.
That's badass.
It was around this time that the methodology behind the strikes began taking effect, and they began to see results like better pay. She would head from place to place before the event and discuss with the workers their working conditions and talk about the results she had been getting in other places. She would head out before a strike to neighboring workers' camps and company towns, trying to recruit people to the unions and agitate them into a frenzy. Mother Jones was working towards making it so all men and women were able to support themselves, and she would do so, and she would do that by showing her face and telling her stories and the stories of other workers. After the Haymarket Affair, Jones went down to Virginia, and according to her autobiography, she had been expected there. After stepping off the train, a young man approached her, saying if she was the notorious Mother Jones or not. To which she replied in the asking if she was, and she replied in the affirmative. The man told her that the superintendent of the mines down there had plans on blowing her head off if she came to see him. To which the tiny matriarch responded, quote, "You tell the superintendent that I'm not coming to see him anyway. I'm coming to see the miners." End quote. Fucking badass little lady. She's getting all fired up. She's like, I don't give a fuck about you. Get the fuck out of my face, homie. So the complaints started coming in from the mine. And they're also something that we covered in our labor union episode. When initially, this is just an example, when initially negotiating with the company, the miners had come to an agreement. They were to fill the cars with coal for a given wage, and that was that. However, after negotiations, the mining company, and just a lot of mining companies did stuff like this at the time, had built the cars with lower bottoms, allowing the cars to hold more coal. The issue was with the fact that the miners were supposed to get paid per ton, which was normally about one car. So when the company had built and modified these cars to hold 1.5 tons, just as an example, the miners were essentially losing a third of their hard-earned money. This was also exasperated by the company men who weighed the coal. Since the company man's interest is in the company, this meant that the miners would frequently shorten, the operators would frequently short the miners by having the scales adjusted to weigh less.
Yeah, but they're smart enough to figure that out, so they're like smart enough they deserve that money, right?
Yeah, and that's what they're protesting for. Yeah, and so more and more the odds were stacked against the men trying to get ahead in life. And these weren't whining, like crying, lazy young people who wanted the most amount of money for the least amount of work. These were like the hardened men and women of the late 1800s and early 1900s, the people who fucking built America. The men and women who built the railroads, who cut the timber, who built cabins, houses, and towns from hand. They used their hard work to pull themselves up from poverty to obtain that which the American dream had promised them.
And they also didn't have the backing behind them whenever they were fighting this.
Yeah,
this is a very dangerous thing to go against these type of companies.
Yeah, and there's like no legislation at this time that's like backing anybody who's doing anything like this at the time.
Yeah, they're not doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no labor laws.
Yeah. And so it's fucking wild. And Mother Jones had been asked to come down to Virginia to help the men down there. And so she had went. When they approached Jones, asking her to speak to the people, or rather, they approached Jones and asked her to speak to all the other people in the company town. And she just fucking loved to do it anyway, so she agreed. However, the town hall was on company land, and the building was also owned by the mine. And so the church was offered by some other residents. It was such that if the miners actually allowed Jones to speak on any part of the property, the company would kick everybody off that parcel of property. Yeah. So just a reminder about company towns for listeners, if you guys don't remember or haven't heard that other episode. If you were kicked off company property, you were also fired. And if you were fired, you were kicked off the property. The company owned everything in these towns, and if you wanted your wife and kids to not be homeless, you would have to listen to your boss. So it's...
But you could also like go away and
Pretty,
like leave for 6 months, grow a beard, and come back, and like,
I mean,
you could just change your name back then, and you'd be fine.
It is like the Wild West era, so to speak. You can come back with a scar on your cheek.
I'm like, no, I'm Billy now.
No, my
I
name's
can't say you're not.
My name's Marshall.
Yeah.
A lot of people tell me I look like that other guy, but I'm not. And then you're like, hey, wife. Oh, shit. So Jones and the Unionists, hold on.
Go.
Jones and the Unionists had set their sights on finding another place to speak. So she left with her friend, Dud Haddo, to go up the road to the local post office when an interesting exchange occurred.
How do you name your kid Dud?
And then how do you have the last name Haddo? And I don't mean to disparage people who have weird last names, but Dud Haddo is like...
Dudley Haddo.
You're dumb. Like, I'm sorry. Like you grow up dumb if your
Call him
name
Mike.
is Dud Haddo.
Call him Mike.
Yeah.
Call him Bubba.
Mike Howell's a good guy.
Bubba would be better.
Yeah.
Be an
Bubba
improvement.
knows how to fix a motor.
And you know what? Bubba is the perfect name for somebody who lives in this kind of time. You know?
Dud lives in the chicken coop.
He lives in the chicken poop, and he in the chicken
He has a
coop.
lot of scars on his inner thighs.
Yeah. And he chases flies around the house. So he's always like breaking stuff. So during Dud Haddo and Mother Jones's walk, Mother Jones became of a pistol being concealed by her friend and told him to expose it a few inches, for it was illegal to carry a pistol completely concealed. Mother Jones is going to tell us the rest of the story from her autobiography here. Quote, as he did so, about 8 or 10 gunmen jumped out from behind an old barn beside the road, jumped on him and said, now we've got you, you dirty organizer.
Dirty organizer.
They bullied us along the road to the town where we were taken to an office where they had a notary public, and we were tried. All those bloodthirsty murderers were there, and the general manager came in. And this is, Mother Jones, I am astonished, said he. What is your astonishment? What is your astonishment about? Exclamation point, said I. That you should go to the house of God with anyone who carries a gun. Oh, that wasn't God's house, said I. That's the coal company's house. Don't you know that God Almighty never comes around to a place like this?
Yeah, goddamn right.
He laughed, and of course, the dogs laughed, for he was the general manager. They dismissed
dogs
any
laughed?
charges. The other guys with guns. They dismissed any charges against me, and they fined poor Dud $25 in costs. They seemed surprised when I said I would pay it. I had the money in my petticoat. End quote.
Which
Petty
is like
cash.
that's like the same as saying like $25 in 1890 something is like
$500.
I had 600 on me, no problem.
Yeah.
I had them covered. So she's no slouch. Like
No,
No, she's a gangster.
She's a gang. It's G for gangster.
Mary G. Harris.
Yeah.
You don't go
Jones.
out unless you can pay the cops off if you know you're going to get into trouble. And she was like, all right, got my get into trouble fund, got my rallies riled up.
But that's what it is. It's gang versus gang at that level.
Well,
Like, you're going against something that is an organized gang.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that like she just doesn't have a home. Like she's just traveling from place to place, like doing all this crazy shit.
It's hard
and,
to pin down someone like that.
Either
for
she's
the
doing it as a
government.
grift to make money and to piss people off, which like Anyway, or she's doing it because she's just like, I don't need a house. She actually has a quote that I didn't include in tonight's episode, something along the lines of like, my home is like my shoes. They go everywhere I go, or something like that. Yeah. So that excerpt was from her autobiography, but I want to note real quick that all of her actions weren't without people who hated her, and as we heard a little
naturally,
bit about. The end of this story, the one where we're talking about Dud Haddo and getting arrested and stuff like that. The end of this story in her book talks about how had Mother Jones and Dud Haddo appealed the case, the company had plans to take them into custody. So when they were at the notary, which is in a jail, had they been like, no, we want to fight this in court, they were going to take them into custody. And once in custody, the men would take Jones and Haddo to the coke ovens to burn their bodies, only to tell the public that they had been released overnight. She was constantly threatened and jailed, and all of this kind of shit made her the most dangerous woman in America. So she's just pulling out stacks and being like, $600? Here. Peace. And people were like, what? We just arrested her for having a gun. Well, she didn't have a gun. Her friend did. But what did her friend? What? And she's just like, peace. Dipping, dude.
Nice.
And Mother Jones seemed like everywhere she went, she was always causing trouble.
So I was going to say, I bet a lot of people hated this woman because not only did she not reside anywhere, she just show up your town and start pissing people off. Like, hey, check it out. What you're doing? Wrong. And they're like, who are you? Lady.
I'm your mother.
And that
She didn't have
I'm
that
your
accent,
goddamn
but-
mother. And
Yeah.
and then she just got entwined, and you're like, dude, what the fuck with this bitch right now? Like,
Yeah, and so it seems like she caused trouble like wherever she went, and that's because that's exactly what she did. Everywhere she went, she left an angry, protesting group of people behind her, and she loved to make waves, baby, and she was good at it. Not only was she good at being an orator and an agitator, she was also beloved by all who she represented. Jones was a beloved sight to many. When she arrived somewhere, it felt like help had finally arrived. Many idolized her, not just for her fiery attitude, but also her soft compassion for her fellow workers. This is why and how the persona, like Mary Harris and Mother Jones, are different things. This is how her persona was created and maintained. She was a mother coming in to help her children, and her children were the working class. Yeah, she's pretty cool. Yeah, and I really...
so she was like, my family died of yellow fever. Fuck the workforce. Sons of bitches ain't being fair. And I'm like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, no, kind of.
Not fuck the workforce.
Yeah, it's fuck the, like,
I
upper
just-
echelons.
Management.
Yeah, the management.
Manners.
Yeah, and in essential...
Manners. I talk.
Are you good, Sam?
No, obviously not.
Yeah, she was just really badass because, like, she lost her entire family and then just took off, and what she found, what was basically, she wanted to be, like, really, really kind to everybody. In fact, Upton Sinclair, which is a fucking excellent name. If you're going to have a name and be a writer, Upton Sinclair.
Yeah.
But he wrote a loosely fictionalized novel called The Coal War, in which he writes about the Colorado coal strike of 1913 through 1914. In this book, he writes about Mother Jones, stating, quote, "There broke out a storm of applause, which swelled into a tumult as a little woman came forward onto the platform. She was wrinkled and old, dressed in black, looking like somebody's grandmother. She was, in truth, the grandmother of hundreds of thousands of miners." One of the beautiful things about Mother Jones is that she helped make American culture what it
Mima?
is. Exactly. She influenced decades of Americans with simple ideas like looking after one's neighbor, the struggle for a better life for not just some, but all. And she just had this unrelenting dedication to the struggles of the working class. By claiming she was older than she was, wearing outdated black dresses, and referring to the people she was dedicated to as her boys, Mother Jones had created a character that wasn't fucking around when it came to raising him right. As the online newspaper
You're pretty proud of that one, aren't you?
Oh, I really am. I'm really proud of that line. As the online newspaper / internet publication with her namesake says, so this is from motherjones.com, quote, Here, Mother Jones's voice would have risen loud and clear. Her memory evokes the great American tradition of protest. It reminds us that passion still matters and that a well-crafted symbol can offer inspiration, emboldening us in a world where the possibility of meaningful change sometimes seems beyond our reach. End quote.
I wish that there was something going on where we could
Like relate to it?
yeah,
Yeah,
but like,
because
everything's
so
going
good right
great.
now. It's
yeah,
so
well,
good right now.
But you know what? Maybe someday somebody will find a
Maybe one day we'll have to
connection or
struggle for
Dude,
something.
just looking at this woman's face,
Oh yeah,
you can see
you love her, right?
just how hard ass
Dude,
she
yeah.
really is.
She is
Dude,
fucking. God damn! Like if you were on the wrong
Not
side
what I
of her,
expected.
not what you expected, no.
if you were on the wrong side of her, you
No.
were gonna fucking get it. But she looks like you would also go and sit up on her lap as a 6-year-old and drink tea.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
she makes a mean Sunday.
She looks like that.
Oh yeah, she makes the best sweet tea you ever had. She
Yeah.
can fry chicken like a boss, and she will whip
The
your
shit
fucking
out of
ass.
you.
Yeah.
It looks like that friend's grandma that your friend keeps inviting you over to dinner with,
Well, there we go.
but you don't really want to go, not because the food isn't good and that it's not a great
That's an
household,
older photo.
but because she's just fucking like, God damn,
No,
my
I mean,
manners
George,
aren't
I
good
love
enough to
coming
sit at
over
this
your house
table
for
and I'm going to
dinner,
hear
but
about
your
it.
Mima is fucking evil.
No, I think it-
Well, but then he's like, but she's making her like catfish tonight.
Yeah,
man.
and he's like,
And
all
you're
right.
like, oh, yeah, you know what?
Okay,
I'll
it's
be
worth
there,
it.
Just don't
man.
wear your blue jeans and wear a button up and
Yeah.
Don't
I
even
mean,
talk
do your-
about dancing.
Yeah.
No. He's like, don't even talk about the mine strike. She will go on for hours
Yeah.
about. No, she was so badass
So
that when
mention
a
corporate
textile
anything, you can come over for dinner.
yeah, she was so badass that when a textile strike had started in Pennsylvania, Jones headed up there to see more or less what kind of shit she could stir up.
Oh,
Which
I
is a
can
back-
already imagine a textile strike. She's like, they're making quilts by you sons of bitches.
Yeah, and
Book me the next
train.
whichever
Carriage.
era of
Carriage.
transportation is going on.
Well, and like cars are starting to come out, but they're kind of it's 19. Yeah,
There's no roads anywhere.
Yeah,
of meaningful distance. Everything goes by train.
Yeah, you
Everybody
buy a
goes
car
by
to go
train.
around the
If-
block.
If you go across the state, you go by train
Yeah.
or barge.
Yeah, and so she was going to Pennsylvania to see what kind of shit she could stir up, but that's kind of inaccurate because she didn't want to stir up shit. She wanted to get the workers who were striking for their separate, different kind of textile fields to get together and create unity among them. She wanted to stir them up, and she wanted them to stir up shit. If she could stir them up, newspapers would be talking about it, and that's what she wanted. She wanted people to talk about what's happening to their mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. In 1901 or 03, it depends on which source you cite, Jones was also sent to Kensington, Pennsylvania, where 75,000 workers went on strike. When she learned of the situation, she'd fucking hit the ground running. With 75,000 workers striking, that 10,000 or so of which were children, her first job was to assess the situation and make a plan. Her plan consisted of bringing, quote, a number of boys and girls, end quote, to a place called Independence Park. She assembled a group of them with banners and picket signs and paraded them through the streets of the park, where she would hold a meeting. This is the start of what was later named the March of the Mill Children. The laws in Kensington had prohibited anyone under the age of 12 to hold a job, but the local companies didn't seem to care. Because, like, their little hands were really good at, like, holding needles, and they could, like, hold the small parts of the machines, and their tiny bodies could fit in the machinery. and
Yeah,
they
how
could
do you think
figure
we
out-
get
Yeah,
iPods?
it was really cute. Really cute.
We don't have iPods anymore, do we?
No.
I think they're outdated.
We're gonna keep
But this was made all the worse by the fact that women would have to lie in order for their children to go to work, which wasn't an ideal situation if you were starving. If you were a starving, hardworking mother trying to provide a better life for that child. The situation was bleak. To get their children to work, a mother would often either have to lie about her child's age and thus be guilty of perjury, or would have to starve themselves and their child without that extra money in the household. It was a situation for which Mother Jones held contempt. At Independence Park, she spoke about how the luxurious houses and mansions were, quote, built on the broken bones, the quivering hearts, and drooping heads of these children, end quote.
Fucking metal, man.
Yeah. She further.
She ain't wrong.
She ain't wrong. She furthered that
But
by
that's super metal.
she furthered that by demanding officials at City Hall, which was across the street from the park, to pay attention, to open their windows and hear their pleas. She was unable to get information published in the local newspaper, however, as the company had held part ownership. So, like, if the journalists and writers at the newspaper were scared to write about it, Jones's only choice was to go directly to the officials, because nobody else is going to raise a stink. She wanted them to know about the conditions in which they were allowing children not old enough to legally work. In her book, Jones describes the children as such, quote, "The workers were striking for more pay and shorter hours, because, mind you, there's 10,000 children, a bunch more other people. Everyday little children came into union headquarters, some with their hands off, some with the thumb missing, some with their fingers off the knuckle. They were stupid, like to stoop low to something. They were stupid things, round-shouldered and skinny. Many of them were not over 10 years of age."
Well, they're also
quote.
stupid because they're little kids.
I mean,
but, like,
that's-
every kid's stupid.
Yeah, and so the protest was about raising awareness as to the conditions for the children, like just the workers, but also the children.
Especially the children.
Yeah. And it was about like getting a raise in wages and improved working conditions. I read during my research that a kid of like 10 years old would get about, like, I think it was $3 a month or something like that working at these places.
Oh God.
And or no, it was $3 a week, and then girls made like pennies.
Yeah.
Not much. Yeah. So it's
Well,
really,
it turns out the working conditions were really, really safe, but Mother Jones was actually taking these kids into a back alley and just smashing their shit off like hammers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a psychopath.
well, and
Well, you-
she
you
was
need
trying
a
to
cause.
Antifa the whole situation, really.
And like
Yeah,
you
black
know,
blocs
there's
was-
some,
Yeah, I know.
like,
You need a martyr. You need
awesome-
martyrs. And if they're little kids, it works even better.
Exactly.
They're
There's a badass
False
old
flag,
woman
false
behind
flag,
Antifa,
false flag, false flag.
just shattering windows, giving guys like
Buy my
umbrellas and like
supplements.
tear gas to go out there, like planting like stacks of bricks and
Guys, I got
corners,
supplements. I got buckets of beans.
Buckets of beans.
You get a 5-pound bucket of beans. I'll send it to your house. $1,000. Special survival beans.
Survival
you ever
beans,
think
baby.
about-
Put the vitamins right in the beans.
There's
you
an
guys ever-
apocalypse coming, and you need to get your beans.
You guys ever think about how like all of our grandpas just being like wait, there's a protest group called like anti-fascists? Like, wait, not everyone's part of that?
Yeah, right.
What did I do when I was overseas?
Well, but Antifa, the term Antifa comes from like even before World
Yeah.
War II. It's like shit. The guy who wrote 1981, George Orwell, right?
Orwell, yeah.
86.
1986. Thank you. Didn't he go to Spain and fight fascists like
did.
in his 20s?
He did,
right?
Yeah.
Like he
Pretty
was
cool.
Antifa.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
That Antifa has been around forever and it
Oh, yeah.
always
No,
will
no.
be. But
It's
you
really
should
weird
just
to-
be who you are.
It's really weird to think
We
that
should all
people,
just be Antifa.
people
Like-
who hate Antifa hate the people who stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just
I love
beyond
that.
me.
I love that picture of D-Day. It's like from the fucking boat, you know, like 3 guys back. Definitely somebody who's a bullet sponge and about to be dead took this picture, right? And the caption is like, a bunch of Antifas ruin fascist party. You know, like,
So-
and like burn their flag. I mean, like something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, like just victimizing the Nazis like, completely.
Freedom of speech. So again, the protest was about like, not having children in the workplace. It was about better wages and improving the working conditions, which Jones exemplified to the crowd that attended by holding up the mutilated hands of the child laborers and saying, "quote," this is her autobiography.
Whoa, when Joe said it was metal, he didn't
No.
Now
Hold
it's
up. Because, quote from her autobiography, "I held up their mutilated hands and showed them to the crowd and made the statement that their little lives went out to make wealth for the others, that neither state or city officials paid any attention to these wrongs, that they did not care that these children were to be the future citizens of the nation. The officials of City Hall were standing standing the windows open. I held the little ones of the mills high above the heads of the crowd and pointed to their puny arms and legs and hollow chests. They were light to lift. I called upon the millionaire manufacturers to cease their moral murders, and I cried to the officials in the open window opposite. Someday the workers will take possession of your city hall, and when we do, no child will be sacrificed on the altar of profit. The officials quickly closed the windows, as they had closed their eyes and their hearts. End quote.
And then when they were all just gasps, she pulls out a cracker box and just throws out the kids' knuckles one by one at the window. Just be like, you cannot hide from the truth.
God, that'd be creepy if she was the one chopping off fingers. Anyway, after the demonstration in Kensington, Joan asked some parents if she could borrow their children for a few days. Her plan was a week, but 10 days. 10 days was going to be the maximum that they would be gone.
How many fingers, though? How many fingers will they come back with?
Here, just wait to the end of this paragraph.
Oh, God.
So she gathered some children and some adult chaperones to help with tending to all the kids and took them on what she described in her book as a, quote, tour, end quote.
Yeah.
So
What can you get those little fingers in?
So if you're gonna take a bunch of people on tour, tour means to like go and impress people in different towns. What kind of people are you gonna bring for a message like Mother Jones?
Oh, deformed little freaks.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a little circus show going around. Yeah.
I don't even want to try and imagine.
Hi, Fresh.
It's just horrible.
Yes, I get kisses from Fresh. Thank you. Mother Jones's group left for Philadelphia, where it's always sunny, to have another mass meeting. She eventually made her way to President Roosevelt with the children, or made her way to see President Roosevelt, hoping that he would make the comparison between his well-fed children and these mangled and emaciated children. And was kind of hoping that would
loves plump children.
Yeah, he was hoping that would help him pass a law in Congress to prohibit childhood exploitation. As they marched from town to town, marchers would stop with produce, vegetables, and fruits. The wives of the farmers would sometimes bring food and clothing. And, quoting her autobiography, quote, the interurban trainmen would stop their trains and give us free rides, end quote. I had to quote her directly because I tried to keep, like, interurban trainmen is not something that's easily translated into, like, common slang. And I feel like...
I mean, I hear you say it, like, every other day, but, like, it's hard to, like write it into, like, a... Like,
especially for their day and age. It's like, we know about the interurban trainmen, you know, like, we know all about them in today's day and age, but, like, I don't know, it feels like a hard eye.
Yeah, like back then, it's definitely something very racist. Now it sounds like something dealing with the mole men that live underneath the surface.
Yeah. So Mother Jones and her company had stopped just outside
think it was racist.
Trenton.
It literally just means like the interurban, like the train that goes inside the city, right?
That's the sarcastic joke we're making.
Oh,
Sam.
fuck, dude.
Yeah, right over that. Mother Jones and her company had stopped just outside of Trenton, New Jersey for lunch when one of these interurban trainmen stopped their car to notify Jones and her company that the police were being sent to let them know that they could not enter town. Unlike today, police at the time could be very volatile. And so the natural reaction would have been to flee. However, the children, Jones and Jones's gigantic balls, did nothing more than say, all right, police will be here in time for lunch.
I didn't expect that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not denigrating to women whatsoever.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a break. And we're going to come back to this story where...
we're going to talk about his gigantic dick.
Her huge ovaries.
She talks about important people. She gets... put in jail, and you know her life is threatened again. So it's
jailed, bailed,
giant labia.
Yeah. So we will see you listeners on the other side of this break.
Velociraptor.
Mound.
And now a word from our fake sponsors that we made up for your entertainment. Have you or a loved one been injured during a recreational activity?
Then call me, Rex at Rex Rex's Recreational Law Firm.
Are you the victim of golf or ball golf?
I'll sue him.
Did you hit yourself in the face with a fishing pole or a fish?
I'll sue you.
Did you skin your knee at the Grand Canyon?
I'll sue the federal government.
Did your fingers get all pruny when you went surfing?
I'll sue Mother Nature.
Did you get a sunburn while lying on the beach?
I'll sue the sun. Because I'm Rex at Rex Rex's Recreational Law Firm. It's not just fun, it's the law.
Le escargot board. Snails on the bottom, cargo space on top. You will get there slowly.
The Left Hand Emporium. Come get your looms, brooms, and grooms, wrenches, benches, and wenches. Or get some ceiling fans, garbage cans, frying pans, and more. The Left Handed Emporium. It's not quite right. It's what's left. Come on down to the Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court, where you'll find
Wonton pickup available in quarter ton, half ton, wonton. Come pick up your wontons at Wonton pickup.
Or come visit me down here at Pick and Pulled Pork. Whether you need some carbs or a carburetor, we got it here at Pick and Pulled Pork.
Or Sid's Seafood and Shake Shack in the driveway next to Dave's place, Unit 347.
Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court. Smack down on some delicious grub. Closed once a week for Monday Night Raw.
Located off of Highway 76, Beale Street, exit 47, left at the Texaco, then a right, a half a mile past the Bill Murray Memorial Park next to the bridge. If you hit the clam, you've gone too far.
Thank you for listening to our fake sponsors. If you like what you've heard, like, subscribe, and share. It all helps. Now back to the show. God damn it, we're back.
Fuck yeah, we are.
So when we left, as our listeners may remember, Jones was just warned that her little child army is about to see some pretty cool cops, because we know cops are really cool.
The coolest.
And when somebody told her that, the train guy told her that, she said, "All right, the police will be here in time for lunch." So the police arrived and saw a bunch of children and a few adults eating from tin plates and cups. Mother and Jones invited the police to come and join them for lunch. The police officers mentioned nothing about blocking their entry into Trenton. They offered smiles and, quote, spoke kindly to the children, end quote. And so, like, the cops, their job was to come and, like, tell them, you're not going anywhere. And they just, like, didn't do their job, which is very out of character for police.
Well,
yeah.
so
They're
I'm-
righteous.
yeah, no, I don't think it's that out of character. It's just that, like, the
Go to
idea
jail.
for those cops back then to fucking kill these kids or do something harmful to these kids was beyond what they were willing to do. It was a line they were not going to cross,
Huh.
right?
Weird, yeah.
Cops just don't have that line so close to them these days, but it's there somewhere.
Yeah. So it
Shit's
seems
just
that
gonna have to get weird, really fucking funky. We'll find it.
Yeah.
There'll be one cop that turns around and shoots his fucking captain in the fucking face.
not encouraging cops to do that.
I
Probably a bad
think his
idea.
name was Donner, and didn't go well for him.
So it seems
it's got to go well for him.
It seems
but
that Jones had a
us.
knack for touching the hearts and minds of not just the workers she represented and fought for, but also the people with higher educations and levels of power in government. In her autobiography, she is the story about how she spread the knowledge, but I think it's also important that we remember to whom she was sharing this information.
Whom?
That actually might be the wrong way to use it, but I wrote it anyway, and so
Whom?
I gotta say it's my script. So here she is in her own words. Quote, I called on the mayor of Princeton and asked for permission to speak opposite of the campus of the university. I said I wanted to speak on higher education. The mayor gave me permission. So she's just fucking lying to him. A great crowd gathered, professors and students and the people. I told them that the rich robbed these little children of any education of the lowest order, that they might send their sons and daughters to places of higher education, that they used the hands and feet of little children, that they might buy automobiles for their wives and police dogs for their daughters to talk French to.
Bonjour!
I said the mill owners I said the mill owners take babies almost from the cradle, and I showed those professors children in our army who could scarcely read or write because they were working 10 hours a day in the silk mills of Pennsylvania. So first of all, police dogs for their daughters to talk French to. Hell yeah. Like, she's fucking down for the shit talking, dude.
Allez-vous coucher? I'm like, wow.
Dude, she's just so badass. So during the Children's March, Jones led her army from Kensington, Pennsylvania, to Trenton, New Jersey, New York City, and their tour.
Jersey represent.
Their tour was successful by like a different metric. See, because the textile workers that had originally started the strike had failed, and all the men and women and children had to either get back to work or go home and lose their jobs. However, Jones had created quite the stir when she literally paraded mutilated children around. It was shocking to see such small children with such drastic injuries, and that's where the appeal would come in. You see, as Jones had been parading these kids around, shaming authorities and encouraging strikers, people had fucking noticed. Jones had created such a spectacle that she had grabbed the attention of the nation. Laws in Pennsylvania were eventually passed that limited child labor. According to those laws, children weren't allowed to work until the age of 14, which meant that thousands of children were sent home from the mills, mines, and textile factories. It's safe to say that Mother Jones protected thousands of children by doing what she did.
So would you say that this was like the start of the downfall of America?
This is definitely when communism starts taking over. Yeah, it's right after Roosevelt. No, and so by getting this law passed, Mother Jones had effectively sent so many kids home, and just like she'd protected all these children, but she also got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and what are all these parents gonna do? Watch their kids?
Yeah, no. Well,
we need money to afford this household. Thank you. Now my children can't work.
Yeah.
Now I have to start a farm.
Tenant farming again? She's losing her mind. She's like, what have I done? So Jones made a lot of friends, but one man, Governor William Glasscock, was not one of them.
I caught it too. His name's Glasscock?
Yeah, we're going to get to it. We're going to get to
Old
it.
Billy Glasscock.
I see right through that shit, man. I see it.
We're mature people here.
During the coal strikes in West Virginia, Jones had gone down there to see what she could stir up. She gave a speech to the miners, encouraging them to defend themselves if necessary, and called on the state's government to disarm the mine guards. During this time, Glasscock, who Mother Jones called Crystal Peter, decided to de-escalate.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, dude!
Shut the fuck
She fucking
up.
roasted him.
Crystal Peter.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that you
gotta
don't hear.
you're fucking lying to me right
I
now,
am not.
dude.
You don't hear like
He's
the
last
best. He's
names
the
like that
best.
anymore.
So during this time, Glasscock, who Mother Jones called Crystal Peter,
I'm an adult, I promise.
Glasscock tried to de-escalate the situation by appointing a commission. So he appointed a commission to find a settlement between the mine operators and the union. This was a lovely step in the direction of diplomacy, but he also sent in the National Guard by way of martial law. He did this.
With one hand he giveth
One hand he Glasscocketh.
away. Snap.
Yeah, and
that.
he did this for two reasons. Like, this was his reasoning. He wanted to send in the troops and show a government presence, but he also wanted to disarm both sides.
He was just extremely pissed because he got called Crystal Peter. And was like, oh yeah, you don't think I won't bring in the National Guard? Fuck you.
You think my dick is see-through?
So this is Portland.
Why? No, what's going? What
Never
happened?
mind. Never mind.
What happened in Portland?
Let's just keep going. It was like I don't know when this airs.
Oh,
Yeah. It might be.
If something's
in the future,
happening in
might be
Portland, I
later.
think I should know
yeah,
about
no,
it.
it's cool, man. It's cool.
okay. So,
Well, it's definitely not airing now, so it'll have to be in the future, Joe.
So Crystal Peter decided he also wanted to disarm both sides. This went poorly, however. The commission failed and the troops were pulled out. Further violence brought the troops back in when Jones called a meeting with Glasscock. She and some of her boys gathered together and decided to march down to Charleston. Charleston is where Mr.
Cock.
Thank you, Glasscock is.
Wait, is his first name Glass?
No, his first name is...
Translucent rooster.
He is Governor William Glasscock.
Billy Glasscock.
Billy Glasscock. So, as they're marching to Charleston to meet with Glasscock, a local newspaper during that
Invisible
time,
penis.
they printed that the marching people were trying to assassinate the governor. And this freaked a whole lot of town folk out. And so the police, under the impression that the march was sinister, arrested Jones and most of the crew as soon as they entered the capital city. They were indicted by a military prosecutor. However, most of the other ones were just kind of released. Jones was not, though. She stayed in prison for 3 months, but not even jail could stop this fucking juggernaut. She penned letters to Indiana Senators John Worth Kern, who saw the demand for investigators into the labor violations that were going on in West Virginia. Through her correspondence with him, the Senate authorized the investigation. She's in jail, and she gets a Senate-authorized investigation going on, dude. And this investigation was more or less forced, it more or less forced the new governor of West Virginia, Henry Hatfield, to release Jones from jail.
Let me just sort of tell you how I think that letter went somewhere. I'm going to paraphrase,
All right.
guess or whatever.
Sounds like a fun,
But it was
fun,
like,
fun bit.
hey, this is what I want. If you don't give it to me, eventually I'm going to show up with all these fucked up little kids. I'm going to make them fucking touch your face and shit with their fucked up, creepy ass little kid hands. Don't fuck with me, boy. And that
I know
was
kids.
Done.
If an amputee
like, no-
touches a pregnant girl, that kid comes out without a limb. So that's just science.
It's in
science.
the Bible, I think.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Well,
it's
the Bible
both,
is
and,
science.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, never mind. Let's
Pretty
keep going.
cool. So during her
This new
incarceration,
world sucks.
During her incarceration, however, the United Mine Workers of America had negotiated a settlement, which Jones was not entirely happy with, but she accepted nonetheless. Because she's like some of the biggest. She's on like the Bill of Rights for some of these people. She's one of the signers for it. Some renegade militant miners were angry about the settlement, but the operators of the mine finally recognized the workers' union. This is noted by some historians as Mother Jones's greatest success. Mary Harris Jones was a fighter, an agitator, a matriarch, and a symbol to so many people. She left us with the most badass grandmother anybody could ever have. Great grandmother now. She truly wanted to see the working class get their fair shake. The idea of the American dream is that one can pull themselves up from their bootstraps with some hard work. She led men and women and children towards the idea of earning a living wage, having a safe working environment, and making sure the labor of the working class wasn't exploited. They were given their shot at the American dream. So I'd like to go back to the article, The History of Mother Jones, written by Elliot J. Gorn on that Mother Jones website that I talked about earlier. Quote, "The rock of Mother Jones's faith was her conviction that working Americans acting together must free themselves from poverty and powerlessness. She believed in the need for citizens of a democracy to participate in public affairs. Working families, Mother Jones argued, possessed vast, untapped power to fight the corporations that bound them to starvation wages and the corrupt politicians who did the businessmen's bidding. But only strong, democratic organizations of citizen activists, she felt, could achieve real egalitarian change." End quote.
Ain't changed yet.
No.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that these ideas are stuff that, I know we've been sarcastic about it all night, but these are things that we're still kind of working towards. And
That's the big thing with all of this is, like I grew up. My dad is he's a union representative. I grew up with that like my whole life and
Sticking with the union.
all day.
Sticking with the
Like-
union.
And I truly believe that the working class is it's one of the lost kind of like groups of America. They're like kind of the group that got things going, and then like when things were kind of like on the road and kind of rolling, they kind of forgot about them and put a bunch of rules to make sure that these people didn't get what they really wanted or what they really deserved.
yeah.
And like that really like kind of snowballed into what we're like a lot of things that we're fighting now, but also just union representatives and people like building whole organizations around like working to keep these people they're like protected, and
Yeah,
it's a very important thing.
I mean, that's why people don't get married or divorce or have big families anymore. Why would you raise a family? You can't allow them to work the farm anymore.
you can't provide for yourself.
You're like,
either.
oh, I'm going to have 8 kids so they support me. No, that's not allowed. Okay, fuck that bitch.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. So Mother Jones, she was like all of us. She was a good person, but she had her flaws, as all people do. She was a stubborn old woman, and to many was too focused on what she saw as the good fight.
Oh, all right, never mind. Fuck her.
No.
She's canceled.
Her strength and weakness was one and the same. She could only see things through the filter of class struggle. Even women's suffrage was out of the picture when it came to Mother Jones. She saw working women as better at home than at work, since their labor would be exploited as well if they worked in the factories. She saw women's suffrage as a diversionary tactic, a ploy used by the upper crust of society to subvert and insidiously dismantle the arguments for the struggles of the working class. In other words, her beliefs were that women's suffrage wasn't super important when contrasted against the working class's labor struggle against exploitation. She may have had laser-focused and tunnel vision, but the woman who was once described on the Senate floor as, quote, the grandmother of all agitators, end quote, fought for the rights of all people looking for a better life. She spoke with presidents, governors, industry leaders, union leaders, workers, teachers, kids, parents, wives, and husbands. She spoke with the fiery determination that everyone came to know and love from their grandmother.
So she bitched so much that everybody was like, how about you talk to her? How about
wheel
you
gets
talk
the
to her?
grease.
How about you talk to her?
But also, I completely I understand where she's coming from with it. Where, for her, it was I'm gonna go to the core of the issue.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a hard thing to do because we're into thousands of years of buildup of all these institutions that she was trying to crack right to the core of.
Yeah, and not that, what she was essentially saying was like, feminism is good, but all feminists still work for a wage.
Yeah.
And so that is like the underlying thing.
All
that
feminists
for
are
her-
people, and if you have people rights, and right now, what we're doing it the right way, I think now, and it's peeling off layers of the problem instead of going directly to the core and trying to solve it right away.
Well, in some cases, I think going directly to the core is too jarring.
Yeah.
As a political movement, which everything turns into.
Oh, aliens are real, man. But let's keep going.
Well, as a political movement, which everything turns into, if you suddenly change how things are going to be, it is jarring and scary for people who have heard horror stories about the way things are. And so the way I see democracy working is like this line that bends back and forth depending upon who's in control and how the legislature goes. But I think that bending line always goes towards prosperity in one direction or another.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, as said in Jurassic Park, I think it's number 3. Some of the worst things imaginable
Life
have been
finds
done
a
with the
way.
best intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I see
Not life finds a way. But
I see Mother Jones as being one of these people that is just trying to bend that fucking wavering line upward until she dies.
Yeah.
She's just really trying to grab that fucking thing and bend it as far upward in the direction of progress as she really can. And Mary Harris Jones lived to be, depending upon what you think, like when you think she was born, between 86 and 100 years old. She spent nearly a fucking century on this planet fighting for a better life and her hundreds of thousands of kids. She spent nearly a century pissing off and pissing on people who would try to withhold hard-earned compensation. She
Not
spent
actually.
a century encouraging red bandana wearing redneck coal miners to continue with their fight. For it is the fight for all men and children. This woman spent 100 years on this planet at the upper ends of the spectrum,
I don't want
pissing everybody off. And I fucking love her for it. And so it isn't stated what she passed from, but she passed in Silver Springs, Maryland, at nearly a century old. Again, just a fucking whole century. Like 86. She had a great. She was born in like the 1830s. To get 60 and beyond was like you were doing fucking good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so and we're gonna take a moment here to check out this quote from Biography.com's write-up of Mother Jones. Quote: in honor of her allegedly 100th birthday, Mother Jones was celebrated across the country with special labor events in 1930. She died on November 30th of that year. With the workers to the end, she asked to be buried in the Miners' Cemetery in Mount Olive, Illinois.
That's fucking awesome. She probably could have been anywhere too. She's a historical figure at that and going to the miners where all they're buried.
Dude,
and, that's cool.
Sam, you doing okay?
Yep.
You tearing up a little bit?
A little bit.
I know it's
Hell of a lady.
I love hell of a lady, dude. Whew, I'm getting there a little bit myself. But as we come to the end of the
have you
the
noticed
close,
the grandma porn that's been like popping up on like YouPorn, or is that just like the algorithm that
fucking.
it's not that hard, but like,
Joe, that's a guardrail. Joe, that's a guardrail.
it's been a lot more than I've ever seen. Like,
We'll be right back after this special presentation.
I mean, the incest thing has been one thing, but then like grannies have been coming in, and like it's been interesting.
Jesus Christ. So as we get to the close of this episode, I'd like to take a few minutes to go over some of her witty quotes and snappy comebacks, because there's a whole lot of stories that I just couldn't include in her story, and so like I would just definitely wanted to catch some of the highlights. And she really had a hard time with women's suffrage, insisting that agitating and annoying those in power was the only way to get their attention, and that Rockefeller and the like had hijacked womanhood and turned it against women in the form of being ladylike. So here's some quotes describing how she felt about that. A lady is the last thing on earth I'd want to be. Capitalists sidetrack the women into clubs and make ladies of them. Here's another quote. No matter what the fight, don't be ladylike. God Almighty made women, and the Rockefeller gang of thieves made the ladies.
Right.
Yeah, so she's she's got a pretty interesting stance on feminism.
She reminds me of that, was that Laurel Thatcher Ulrich who said, well-behaved women rarely make history?
Yeah. And Mother Jones has, in my opinion, been suppressed in history. But
very not well behaved.
Yeah, very not well behaved. And so, as we've kind of gone over...
These here crippled kids. Look at them.
So,
Look upon their
Look at
horrible
'em.
fingers.
Yeah.
Feel them, touch them. You're just like,
Touch 'em,
she's
let 'em
taking
touch your
like
face.
rubbing kids on people. Like, I'll feel the hands of the kids that you. And you're just like,
obviously,
dude,
what I
whoa.
was just talking about before, like it is a lot more in the subconscious that you might think. But keep going.
Yeah. So as we've kind of gone over in this episode, she was extremely outspoken and wasn't afraid of shit. Here are some of her best quotes about that. Quote, if they want to hang me, let them. And on the scaffold, I will shout, freedom for the working class. Pretty dope.
Damn.
Yeah. And this one is equally good. Quote, I'm not afraid of the pen, nor the scaffold, nor the sword. I will tell the truth wherever I please. Yeah,
I like your
sassy
grandma
lady.
voice, though.
Thank you. It's not very good, but it's better than my original.
Grandma Loren.
So there was also a lot of people saying, like, trying to describe her, especially like journalists, as like a bleeding heart, that her fight came from her softness. But I just want to emphasize how badass people of that generation were. Mother Jones didn't even herself, she didn't see herself as providing help. She literally said this, quote, I am not a humanitarian, I am a hellraiser.
Fuck right,
Yeah.
man.
So I'm going to end tonight with two more quotes which tie together a little bit. It would be negligent of me in covering Mother Jones not to state some of the most beautiful things she's ever said about fighting for the working people and the working people fighting for themselves. Jones would often tell people to remember their friends and loved ones, especially the ones injured or killed, but she had to remind them to stay focused on the fight at hand. And she summarizes this by saying, quote, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." So finally,
Yeah,
I'd like...
yeah, that's cool, man.
Wait,
That's badass.
that's her.
That's her.
That quote is from her.
Yep. I don't know
They
if
use that shit in like war movies, dude.
And finally, I'd like to say that the current events happening in the world would piss off and please Mother Jones.
Yeah.
Everything happening in Portland,
That's what I keep thinking about like 30, 40 years from now. Like there's got to be a couple people in there that's been bouncing around from like protest to protest, really
Yeah.
pushing people on, and there's people doing this now, but we're never gonna know exactly who it is.
So Mother Jones would be pleased to know that the fight is still on. People are still struggling for each other, and the world is agitating the upper crust for justice. But she'd be pissed off that the demonstrators aren't being listened to. Our final quote tonight is Mother Jones saying this: "I hope to live long enough to be the great-grandmother of all agitators." End quote. And you guys, I think she'd be proud.
Here, here. To Mother Jones.
Oh,
Mother
man.
Jones.
Bow with the
A
bow, the bang,
fucking
bang,
lovely
diggy,
woman.
diggy.
Joe, you really need help.
No, she said that too. But
Oh, you're
she just
quoting
didn't-
her,
Yeah,
right.
we,
Yeah,
we
she
didn't-
invented that.
We didn't get
So
up to
what do you
that,
guys
yeah.
think of Miss Mother Jones? Do you guys feel like
like
she's
her.
a great-grandmother?
So does she have like a lineage of family after this?
No.
As in, oh no.
No, her children died when
All
she
her-
was
yeah,
young.
her-
Oh,
family
that's
died.
right. Yeah,
Right.
nobody survived. So okay. I was just like, man, that sounds like just one of those dates you go on where you're like, guys, dude, I just went on a date with this girl. She would not shut the up. She was bitching at every goddamn time that waiter came over and like all this other stuff, and just I'm like, whoa, blind date went crazy.
About the injustices of everything.
Yeah. Apparently, her grandmother was, But yeah,
Great great grandmother was Mary Jones. You know
Yeah.
who the fuck that is?
yeah.
She kept coming back to that too.
Yeah, she wouldn't shut up about this lady.
So, yeah.
She
I'm
unionized
in love with
everything in
her.
the restaurant, and
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on a date. She unionized the restaurant, and they pitchfork mafia the owner when he
So,
came to sort of shut
I'm
it down.
for it.
I guess it went well.
Yeah, all the points that she came out were just, so I was cool with it. But like, it was an intense date.
I wasn't
And so
expecting
I
it,
need
yeah.
a lawyer.
I mean,
And can you please come and bail me out of
Yeah,
fucking
it's
jail?
like $2,000 bail, but like I promise you, like I'm on the right track for doing like good
Just to-
stuff afterwards.
see, like, what I loved the most about her was just looking at what's going on in like Portland and in Minneapolis and places like that. Like, if she was in any of those places, it would just be a fucking rampage.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
she was.
there's someone there.
That's what I took. Yeah, that's what I took away from all of this was that she could just whip any group of people up into a frenzy.
Right now, if someone was public about it, they would be the first one thrown in jail. So you can't have that. But like people are doing it.
Yeah. So, that's the end of the episode. Do you guys have any final comments before we transition into the next?
She was wrong. The rich are right, and please give me a part, like an island somewhere where I could like live for the rest of my life.
Cool.
Do you think she
island
was
to die on.
really hot on minors?
Maybe.
She just really liked being in the environment. She lost her whole family. She's a little lonely. She's
know-
like, and all these guys are like super
Give me that
hot.
cold, dirty dick.
Wow.
She's
That's-
got a slap
that's
in
on-
one. She could definitely make it slap. But
Yeah, and honestly, for the record, I do think she was fucking her boys.
I
Some of
bet
them.
the after parties were
Yeah, but-
fucking bomber.
But there's
like
no,
just
there's no
to
like
mama.
documentation of that, really.
Oh,
Bring that
it
weird ass
was-
little hand over here, you freak.
yeah,
Oh,
and
damn.
well, they
Oh,
talk
damn.
about like
Shit you
the
didn't wanna know
carnivals,
about
the
Mother
freak show at the
Jones.
carnivals have the best time. Like those are like the most fun parties like out of anywhere. Everyone's depraved out of their minds. They're just having a blast.
How the fuck did we get from Mother Jones to Carney's?
Oh, depraved little kids or like deformed little kids.
very cool.
Yeah, like
So-
it's easy. You can make some freaks.
I used to go to those
yeah,
parties in high school, the deformed kids parties.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like
they all play music.
half
in
of them were in the
football
chess
games.
club and stuff like that. But dude, they smoked so much and got down bottles you couldn't find. I don't know.
Speaking of bottles you can't find, Sam,
This is
this
on the air
transition
forever.
has this transition has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. But actually, listeners, next week or the week after next, we're gonna be starting a little 3-part series. I'm gonna be letting my co-hosts take the lead. And so, what are you? You're the first one, right, Sam?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be talking about drugs, and I'm gonna leave it at that. But these are pretty popular drugs. They're actually the most popular drugs in the world.
Huh.
That's what we're gonna be talking about.
Well,
The world's most popular drug.
Are you gonna bring some?
Oh yeah,
hell yeah, we're gonna get it poppin'.
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
gonna be lit.
Yeah, and
We're
so
gonna get fired up.
we're gonna get
It's gonna
fired
smell
up.
good
I'm gonna
in
get
here.
sweaty. It's gonna be great. And then after that, we're gonna be doing a Mr. Joe's episode. What
Yeah.
do you got for us? What's
I
going
got,
on in 3 weeks?
I got something a little interesting. It's 3 different people. The one that I'll hint about is Ireland's only female executioner.
Oh, okay.
Executioner.
Yeah, it was in the 1800s. She's badass.
A lot of badass Irish ladies in tonight's episode.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
She
I'm liking
reminded
it
me a
already.
lot of this story. That's
Yeah.
why I kept thinking about it. Being like, oh, this is gonna be like a theme.
Hell yeah. So Sean,
Badass
what are you
Grammys.
working on?
I'm working on the psychology of podcasts. And I love the silence that accompanied that.
Yeah, I don't.
No, that was a joke. I'm just gonna leave it at that, and go
You got
from
no
there.
idea what you're doing, do you?
I'm not gonna say I do or don't.
That's a no.
A hard no.
That's a hard no. He
You
loves
have like a
talking
good
about his
month,
fucking ideas.
so like,
Yeah.
yeah.
He just doesn't want to do it on air. Is it air if we're?
He's trying to be non-committal. I can see it in this.
Yeah, he's definitely
Yeah.
non-committed.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you guys for listening tonight. Or anybody have
Peanut
any
butter!
final thoughts before we? Because we're gonna, I'm gonna do it. Thank you guys for being here. I'm Loren O'Brien. This has been Black Sheep and Bad Apples episode about our great grandmother. Thank you for being here,
Mother Jones.
and we'll talk to you guys.
Wasn't that a Who
talk
song?
at you guys next time.
Mother Jones's Diary. Fuck Hobo Johnson.
yeah.